Welcome to the A-Game podcast, where I help you bring your best to be your best in all areas of life: business, relationships, career, health and wellness, anywhere you want to excel. I'm your host, Steven Griffith. Today, we're tackling a game-changing topic: how to receive and give feedback in a way that boosts performance. Feedback is the cornerstone of growth. It's how we learn, adapt, and excel. For parents, receiving feedback from kids or teachers sharpens communication and builds trust. Coaches who embrace athletes' input foster resilience and team unity. Athletes who absorb constructive criticism refine their skills faster. Executives and business owners who master feedback with their teams create thriving, innovative teams. And as citizens, giving and receiving feedback respectfully strengthens communities. The benefits are clear. Receiving feedback accelerates learning and sparks self-awareness and accelerates performance. Giving feedback effectively inspires others, clarifies expectations, and drives accountability. Whether you're guiding a child, leading a team, or navigating daily life, mastering feedback makes everyone better. Stay tuned as we share science-based, practical tools and insights for you to be a feedback pro. Let's start with, what is feedback? Feedback is the process of providing constructive information about an individual's performance, behavior, or work to guide improvement. It involves sharing observations, suggestions, or evaluations to enhance skills, productivity, or outcomes. Feedback is crucial because it fosters growth, clarifies expectations, and strengthens communication and improves performance. On the flip side, feedback delivered poorly can be dangerous. Vague or overly harsh feedback creates confusion, defensiveness, and disengagement. When it lacks context or compassion, it erodes trust and morale, leaving individuals feeling undervalued and teams misaligned. Without intentionality, feedback can create resistance of growth. That's why how we give and receive it matters just as much as the message itself. A quote I've used for a long time is this: the better the feedback, the better the performance. So here's the question. So why are most people so bad at receiving and giving it? The answer is simple. We haven't really been effectively coached on this master skill, and a lot of the feedback and giving and receiving feedback has been passed down generationally, and it's not really looked at in this current world that we're in. So we've got to update to a more science-based tools, which we're going to cover today. And, even in my own story, growing up, I never had anyone guide me, how to receive feedback. My thoughts were, if I was getting feedback, something was terribly wrong, or I did something wrong. I would beat myself up about not being good enough and really being overly critical, which really led to this kind of relentless drive to get better, which on one hand was great, but on the other hand, it took a lot of the joy and fun, and at times I just felt like just completely burned out and had this continued feeling of just not being good enough. I ultimately realized I had the wrong mindset. No one ever sat me down to let me know that making mistakes is normal as you advance with skills. That when you try something new or the competition rises, things will happen that won't go your way, and that's really how you learn and advance. The main thing is that it's normal, and when the feedback comes from those setbacks, it's super valuable. When we lean into it with curiosity and positivity, our nervous system is calm and we can hear the feedback and make changes. When we are over-aroused, defensive, beating ourselves up, our sympathetic nervous system is activated and we can't accurately take the feedback in and consequently miss valuable information to improve our performance. In my coaching practice with executive parents, students, professional athletes, and business owners, this topic of communication and feedback is one of the most requested areas of coaching. We just don't know how to do it. We're going to change that today in this podcast. So we're going to start with today how to receive feedback, and then in the second part of today's podcast, we're going to go into how to give it. So let's first dive into the psychology of feedback and why we resist it. So there are two types of feedback. One is feedback that's acknowledging what we're doing well, and we usually handle that, quite well. The other area of feedback is when we get feedback of things that we can improve on or things that we're being challenged with. And so we're really going to focus on the second one. So here are the things why feedback can feel like a threat. So feedback often feels like a threat due to our brain's biological wiring. The amygdala, an emotional center, can interpret critical feedback as danger, triggering what we call the amygdala hijack. This activates that fight, flight, or freeze response, flooding the body with stress. And this really impairs our rational thinking and learning. So instead of processing feedback constructively, we may become defensive or shut down. This evolutionary mechanism, designed to protect us from physical harm, misfires in modern social context. Understanding this response helps us pause, regulate emotions, and approach feedback as an opportunity for growth rather than a personal attack. Next, ego protection and identity threat. Feedback can feel threatening when it challenges, our ego, our identity. According to self-affirmation theory, we strive to maintain a positive self-image, and critical feedback disrupts this, creating an identity threat. This can trigger cognitive dissonance, where conflicting information about ourselves causes discomfort, leading us to reject or rationalize the feedback to protect our ego. Instead of embracing growth, we dismiss uncomfortable truths to preserve our self-concept. Recognize this defensive tendency allows us to confront feedback with humility, using it as a tool for self-improvement rather than a blow to our identity. Next, negativity bias. Feedback often comes like a threat due to negativity bias, where our brains prioritize negative information over positive. This evolutionary trait, designed to ensure survival by focusing on danger, makes criticism feel disproportionately heavy compared to praise. Even balanced feedback can seem harsh because negative input resonates louder, triggering emotional defensiveness. Next, lack of psychological safety, and this is a big one. Feedback can feel like a threat in environments lacking psychological safety. Learning and growth from feedback requires a safe space where individuals feel secure to take risks and fail without fear of judgment or punishment. In unsafe settings, feedback triggers defensiveness, as people perceive it as a personal attack rather than constructive input. This stifles openness and innovation. Cultivating psychological safety through trust, empathy, and supportive communication allows feedback to be received as an opportunity for development, reducing its threatening nature and enabling individuals to embrace learning and improvement. Feedback only works when it feels safe to learn and fail. I've been in lots of environments, on the athletic field and the boardroom. And as soon as that safety is gone, man, the communication shuts down. There's an old saying, when safety is present, you can talk about anything. When safety is not present, you can't talk about anything. So we're going to talk about safety a little further in the episode, but this is really important that we create an environment where there's safety. Next, this is a big one, and I've been guilty of this in the past. I've corrected it since that. Feedback overload and communication style mismatch. All right. Feedback can feel threatening when it overwhelms or mismatches our processing capacity. Cognitive load theory explains that excessive feedback overloads our mental bandwidth, leading to shutdown or resistance. I'm sure all of you, including myself, at times have gotten so much feedback we couldn't even process it. Additionally, a mismatch between feedback delivery and preferred learning styles is also an issue. So real briefly, and as we're going to go into this deeper, that we've got these styles of communication or learning styles. There's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and digital. So visuals are what we see, auditory is what we hear, kinesthetic is how we feel about something, and then digital is how we process. And so if we're getting the information out of our system, so someone's telling us to look at something, but we really need to walk through it, there's going to be a mismatch. And when that mismatch happens, it's difficult to receive feedback. So tailoring feedback to individual learning styles and pacing it to avoid overload fosters clarity and receptivity, transforming feedback from a source of stress into a constructive tool for growth. Next, over-focusing on sender's tone and style. A lot of the athletes that I'm working with and executives, they'll come to me and they'll tell me their coach or their CEO just has a really challenging tone or style, and it's hard for them to take the feedback. They get triggered, or that person might be like overly negative. So feedback often feels like a threat when we fixate on the tone and style rather than its content. Now, this takes practice. Harsh or poorly delivered feedback can overshadow the message, causing us to take it personally and collapse style with substance. This emotional reaction distracts from the information's value, triggering defensiveness instead of reflection. By focusing on the intent and insights within the feedback rather than its delivery, we can separate tone and meaning. Practicing emotional regulation and seeking clarification helps us extract the constructive elements, reducing the perceived threat and enabling personal growth despite imperfect communication. So in those situations, and this is, in the professional ranks all the way down to my junior athletes that I work with, I've got to reframe a lot of my athletes and explain to them that, their coach has the right intention, but they just might not have the best skills to deliver the information. So there's a lot of communication and practice on separating the style and tone versus, okay, what are they actually saying? What are they actually saying? All right, lastly, and this is really important to kind of tie this section up, we have to look at our own beliefs and personal history because that shapes our feedback reactions. Your beliefs about feedback and your personal history with it profoundly shape how you receive and respond to it. Viewing feedback as criticism can trigger the limbic threat response, which we've been talking about, and leading to that defensiveness, withdrawal, or other reactional behaviors like arguing or appeasing. Conversely, seeing feedback as a tool for growth engages that prefrontal cortex, fostering reflection and openness. Your past plays a critical role. Harsh or negative feedback experiences may condition limbic-driven resistance, while supportive ones build a proactive, receptive mindset. So you really need to look at, what is your history of getting feedback? And look at what is your default feedback style. Do you resist? Do you go silent? Do you stay open? Do you argue? Knowing that is essential for your growth. And to shift from that reactivity to clarity, and we'll talk more about this in the other podcasts we've done, is regulating that nervous system, activating the parasympathetic nervous system. And that could be some grounding breaths, 4-7-8 breathing, and reframing feedback as a performance enhancer. Regular reflecting on its benefits builds a proactive mindset over time. With intentional practice, you can transform feedback into a powerful opportunity for development, responding effectively rather than reactively. Now let's look at how to receive feedback, and it all starts with your mindset. So the difference is in two mindsets, a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. A growth mindset embraces feedback as fuel for learning, seeing challenges as opportunities to evolve, excel, knowing you have the ability to change and improve. Conversely, a fixed mindset perceives feedback as a personal attack, resisting change and stunting progress, and a belief that things are fixed and not easily changed. While a growth mindset accelerates skill development and resilience, a fixed mindset breeds defensiveness and missed opportunities. So, really understanding, what is your mindset with this? And are you open? Are you defensive? Back to what we said earlier. Know that the intention is to help you improve, not tear you down. That's important when you get feedback. Next, don't take it personally. We've got to just look at that these are actions and behaviors, not a personality issue or a personality trait. Next, have an attitude of leaning in, looking forward to the big picture and getting better. Being grateful that someone cares enough to help you, and this is a gift. Looking at the intent, not the style, which we've been talking about. And then lastly, not all feedback is 100% accurate. And this is important to really digest. People are giving you feedback, but you ultimately have to decide, is this effective? Is this something I need to work on? And so we want to have our own ability to relate to it and not to be defensive. So here are 5 practices to receive feedback effectively. And this is going to totally change your experience if you are like most people, have a challenge with getting feedback. So number 1, we want to pause and breathe. So when we're getting that feedback, doing the 4, 7, 8 breaths, inhaling for 4, holding for 7, exhaling for 8, doing that for a couple cycles, that's going to calm your nervous system down and reduce that reactivity. The other technique that we've talked about on this show is the grounding breath, where we just take a deep breath, we focus in on our head, what we're thinking, we take a deep breath, and then we breathe all the way down to our feet. This is going to really activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and we're going to move to that prefrontal cortex, which gives us control for rational processing. And doing this is going to lower all your stress hormones, your cortisol, enabling you to stay present with the feedback without being defensiveness. Because when we get over-triggered and that sympathetic nervous system takes over, we can just dissociate from what's happening. And, I use this, pretty much across the board, especially with my young athletes, is, when they're developing and they're learning, they can really take it personally. So we want to have them, coaching them on taking those breaths, calming themselves, and being able to hear the feedback. All right, next, reframe the feedback as growth. So this is what we call cognitive restructuring. We want to mentally reframe that what's happening. Like this is data to improve my A game. This is feedback for me to get better. And when we do that, it helps us, once again, look at the intention. Our beliefs shape our reaction. So viewing it as a threat triggers that negativity bias, while seeing it as growth and a tool that engages, more of a growth mindset, the impact is much better. It's much better how we receive it. So when we do this, it reduces that ego protection and that identity that, is making feedback feel, more constructive rather than personal. Next, ask for clarifying questions. And this is what we call that cognitive engagement. When we're getting that feedback, we can ask questions like, can you give me an example? Can you show me some more specifics? Ask questions that get clarity in the feedback that keeps you engaged and also signals openness to the giver. Why do we do this? Because, vague feedback increases anxiety and that cognitive overload. So by clarifying specifics, it reduces the ambiguity and fosters more of that safety for this. And it shifts the focus from emotional triggers to actionable insights, making feedback feel collaborative. This next one is, I think, just a lost art in all of it. It's just a lost art in our society. And it's super important, so we're going to dig into this a little bit. It's saying thank you after receiving feedback. This is crucial for, that growth and connection. It signals openness. It reduces defensiveness. And it helps align the psychological safety principles. Gratitude shifts the nervous system from a threat response to a collaborative mindset. Engaging the prefrontal cortex, again, remember, that's the executive center. It builds trust with the giver, enhancing source credibility and future interactions. A sincere thank you also reinforces the growth mindset, framing feedback as a gift. This simple act transforms feedback into a positive exchange, encouraging constructive dialogue and personal development. How to say thank you for feedback. So you may think this is funny, but we really need to practice this. Acknowledge promptly. Respond soon after receiving feedback to show attentiveness. A simple thank you for your feedback. That usually works. Be sincere. Use a genuine tone. Avoid that robotic, overly formal phrasing where it sounds like you're not present. Briefly note what makes that feedback helpful. Thank you for pointing out that area. It gives me real clear direction. Stay neutral. Don't justify or debate the feedback in the moment. And, when you say thank you, it really calms the nervous system, allows that deeper connection for you and the giver, and it really just keeps an honest dialogue going. On this whole topic of receiving feedback, I had a family, I'm working with the whole family, one of their athletes, a young athlete, was really having a difficulty receiving feedback. A 13-year-old, young woman, softball player. And so I did a session with mom, dad, and their student athlete. And the whole session was based on, how to receive feedback. But the daughter, the young woman that I'm working with, really felt like she was being attacked. She wasn't, but all the things we're talking about. So we did this group training, right? And interesting enough, when we started saying thank you, so I would give the mom some feedback, the dad the feedback, and they demonstrated thank you. And then when the daughter did it, I could see the dialogue starting to change. So this little process can have a big impact. And also it goes back to that emotional safety and connection. All right, next, self-compassion. We've talked a lot about self-compassion in our previous episodes. Once again, a powerful tool in getting feedback. Practicing self-compassion after receiving feedback mitigates its emotional sting and fosters growth. Feedback can trigger self-criticism, activating the amygdala and that identity threat we've been talking about. Acknowledging discomfort with kindness and recognize the shared human imperfection and staying mindful without over-identifying with the critique. This calms the nervous system, shifting focus from the limbic reactivity to the prefrontal cortex of reflection. By affirming, I'm learning, that's okay, you reduce negativity and that bias and defensiveness. Self-compassion transforms feedback into a constructive opportunity, enhancing resilience and maintaining a growth mindset for long-term improvement. How do we practice self-compassion after receiving feedback? Here's a couple tips, real simple. First, acknowledge emotions. Pause and recognize any discomfort or emotional sting you might be feeling, frustration, shame. Without judgment, just silently note, God, I'm feeling challenged, and that's okay. Speak kindly to yourself, using gentle, supportive self-talk. I'm learning. It's normal. It's normal to make mistakes, to counter that self-criticism. And normalize that imperfection, reminding yourself that everyone receives feedback and can struggle with it at times. This is part of being human and growing. Staying mindful. Avoid over-identifying with that critique. Focus on the specifics of the feedback rather than the generalization to your worth. This is about the task, not your entire ability. Self-talk. This is a little bit what we said already, but really those phrases that we've learned before. May I be at ease. May I see the goodness in myself. May I connect to my gifts and talents. May I have the courage to push through. Repeating those phrases can really calm that nervous system. And then lastly, reflect, act into performance. Once calm, use the feedback constructively by identifying actionable steps for improvement, reinforcing a growth-oriented approach, and increasing your performance. So now I want to talk about the process of rehearsing, getting feedback. And this is something that most people don't do. If you don't practice in anything, it's going to be very difficult. So here's a 4-step routine. Number 1, the feedback's coming or you're getting ready for it. We want to start with some 4, 7, 8 breaths, calming the nervous system. 2, we want to listen without interrupting. We want to take in the information. 3, we want to ask clarifying questions. Then we want to summarize back to the giver and then saying thank you. And when we do this, it automates a positive response and reducing that overload, any style mismatch, and fosters openness even under pressure. Now let's switch gears and focus on how to give feedback. Giving feedback well is critical for boosting performance. Clear, specific feedback, when delivered with empathy and respect, fosters psychological safety, encouraging recipients to engage rather than defend. Well-crafted feedback promotes a growth mindset, balancing praise and critique, counteracts negativity bias, and builds trust and increases motivation and performance. So, when we're looking at this, if you're a parent, a coach, a business owner, CEO, a teammate, we've got to be able to give feedback, right? Because that's how it's going to improve our performance and take our game to that next level, to our A game. So number 1, you want to explain your belief and style and the intention of feedback to your teams, your family, your athletes. So you want to, let somebody know, hey, I'm going to be giving feedback from time to time. Here's my intention. It's for you and me to have a better relationship, to increase our performance. And so they have a backdrop of what to expect when you give feedback. This is really important, and not many people do it. So you want to establish what feedback means and the process that you'll be giving it in. Okay, next, you want to regulate your emotions. Just like we talked about receiving feedback, as the giver, man, as you're a coach, you're running a company, there's things that are going to get us triggered, and we're going to get fired up, right? We don't want to come in there, at high RPMs, burning people's eyebrows off. We want to regulate ourselves before we deliver the feedback, right? Next, notice the emotional state and the environment of the receiver. I've seen many times when I've been in organizations where leadership is not paying attention to what's going on in the room, and with their best intention, it's just not received well because it wasn't the right environment. Next, know what you want as an outcome for that feedback. A lot of people are giving feedback, but they're not clear. Gosh, what do I want from this? Next, deliver feedback with alignment. So your body language, your voice tone, and words are aligned. There's nothing worse than delivering content with a harsh tone or body language that's shut off, or your head's down, or you're clearly showing body language that's not aligned. And then after you've done this, you want to have that receiver repeat what they heard, and then you're going to affirm that, right? Then you're going to affirm that. So we've got to create that psychological safety first. So as we jump in here, creating psychological safety before giving feedback is essential for effective communication and growth. Research on high-performance teams shows that safe environments where individuals feel secure to take risk enhances learning and collaboration. This reduces the amygdala's threat, it minimizes defensiveness, and that fosters that openness. By prioritizing rapport and mutual respect, feedback becomes constructive. So how do we create that safety before we give feedback? Well, number one is we want to have that rapport, establishing a foundation of trust through genuine connection, engage in active listening, showing empathy, demonstrating care for the person's well-being, and even saying, hey, I value, your contribution and I want to support your growth. They've got to know you're on the same team. Set a collaborative tone. Frame feedback as a shared goal for improvement. Let's work together. Let's make this even better. You need to really clarify that intent to help them and not to criticize. Be transparent. Explain the purpose of the feedback, as we talked before, and how it will be delivered. I'd like to share some observations to help you achieve your goals. Does that work for you, as an example? Encourage dialogue. Invite the recipient's perspective to create a two-way conversation. Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts after I share this. Be open to hearing their thoughts. Choose the right setting. Delivering feedback in a private, comfortable environment to reduce anxiety and ensure focus. Creating psychological safety transforms feedback into a constructive, collaborative exchange, strengthening relationships and driving personal team growth. It should be a dialogue, not a personal attack. Psychological safety ensures recipients embrace feedback, driving performance and innovation in teams. Next, the SBI model. What is that? Situation, behavior, impact. The SBI model, developed by the Center of Creative Leadership, transforms feedback into a powerful performance tool. Here's how it works. By specifying the situation, when and where, then describing observable behavior, what happened, and next articulating its impact, why it matters. SBI ensures precision and objectivity. So here's an example. We're going to give some examples now as we go through. Imagine it's a young baseball player. So here it would be. In the third inning, you did not keep your eye on the ball going into your glove. That will make it difficult to be consistent and confident in making those types of plays. Keep your head down, watch the ball into your glove, and you will be successful. I know you can do it. Let's practice this. So what we talked about, so it was the situation, what they did, and the impact. right? Here's an example for somebody giving a presentation. In the presentation yesterday, you left out key data points on the product. Without that, it will make it hard for our clients to make a decision to move forward. I like the stories you weaved in, and let's have the data points in the next presentation so they can hear them. You got this. So, presentation, the data was left out, right? And what the impact was. And so as we go through, you can layer some of these techniques, but these are very precise techniques to have the information received. Next, the feedback sandwich. Just like my favorite In-N-Out burger, there's a bun, there's the meat, and there's a bun. Feedback sandwich is simple and powerful for delivering feedback, especially in early stages in the trust and relationships. It starts with a genuine positive comment to create a supportive tone, followed by constructive feedback, that's the meat, focus on specific areas for improvement, and it closes with encouragement or appreciation, reinforcing the person's value and potential. This structure, and so the last part's the other bun, helps lower the defensiveness and keeps the conversation motivating. However, it's crucial to avoid making it sound robotic or manipulative. Each part should be authentic and tailored to the situation, ensuring the person feels respected and motivated rather than suspicious or patronized. So, why does it work? Okay, when we come in with an acknowledgement of something positive, it reduces and lowers defensiveness, right? Create a supportive tone. Once again, reduces the amygdala. The amygdala is the key to this whole feedback process as you've been hearing. And it allows us to be more open for the constructive part. 2, it builds trust in early relationship. Positive, encouraging structure fosters that psychological safety, especially when trust is still developing. Encouraging collaboration. Maintains motivation. Ending on an uplifting note reinforces the recipient's value and potential, aligning with the growth mindset to inspire improvement. Balances feedback. The sandwich approach ensures criticism is framed within a context of appreciation, making it feel constructive rather than demoralizing, and encourages engagement. When delivering authentically, it respects the recipient's dignity, fosters a positive dialogue, and reduces suspicion or disengagement. Feedback sandwich, when used thoughtfully, really transforms potentially sensitive conversations into motivating, growth-oriented exchanges, particularly effective in building trust and driving development. Okay, here's an example. We're going to go back to the baseball, okay? Great job getting to the ball. That's the bun, right? And when you get there, you need to look the ball into your glove. That's the meat. And great hustle getting to the ball. That's the bottom bun, okay? Let's go use that presentation example again. Great story to set up your sales presentation. Where you went off is not backing up the pitch with enough data. You need to add more data in the future, and I want to really acknowledge a good amount of enthusiasm you had in that presentation. So we had bun, meat, bun. Now, we don't always want to use the feedback sandwich with the bun, the meat, and the bun. Sometimes, when you go to In-N-Out, you just get the Flying Dutchman. And the Flying Dutchman is just the meat. So sometimes we just want to switch it up, right? We can just go right into, here's the correction, right? Need to keep your head down, look that ball into your glove. Sometimes we can go with, need to keep your head down, look that ball into your glove, and great job with your movement to get to the ball. We want to switch it up, because if we only use the feedback sandwich, and that's the only technique we use, it's going to feel like a setup. People are going to be like, oh, here comes the positive, here comes the challenge, right? So we want to have some flexibility. All right, next tool, using the 5-to-1 positive to negative ratio. Research by Lasada and Fredrickson, 2005, found that high-performing teams and strong relationships maintain about 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative. It's a 5-to-1 ratio that ensures feedback and criticism don't overwhelm or demoralize people. The positive feedback acts as the emotional buffer. It makes it easier for individuals to hear and respond to constructive criticism without losing motivation or trust. Regular, sincere, positive interactions build emotional resilience, trust, and engagement, creating a foundation where tough conversations feel safe and productive. Keeping this balance requires attention and leads to healthier, more effective communication and collaboration over time. And, we want to, in this, just generally be aware, am I over-focused on the negative and correction? And certain coaches have that style. And, you want to be mindful and just kind of paying attention. Am I feeding in the positivity throughout the practice, throughout my leadership and my organization? Because we got to look at our own patterns, right? We got to look at our own patterns, how we do that. And, when we do that, things are more balanced, right? Things are more balanced. So that 5-to-1 ratio. Now, does it have to be 5-to-1? Do you need a calculator? No. But you certainly want, 2 or 3 times more of the positive interaction. Now, the other thing is, if you have no positive interaction, and we'll hear stuff like, if somebody's not saying something to me, if my boss isn't saying something to me, or my coach is saying something to me, that means I'm doing well. We want to stay away from that as well. The absence of feedback is not good feedback. We do want that acknowledgement. All right, next. Being specific, timely, and future-focused. So effective feedback should be specific, timely, and future-focused. Vague comments like, "you're not a team player," can feel personalized and helpful. Instead, describe, as we talked about before, specific behavior and contexts, such as, in yesterday's meeting, you cut off 2 team members, which impacted the team morale. The timing also matters. The sooner you can give the feedback after an event or situation, the more relevant and easier it is to act on. And then finally, focusing on the future. By suggesting ways to improve, like next time or in the future, this pause, allows them to start futurizing, right? Makes the feedback feel actionable, respectful, and supportive, that in the future there can be something different. The next one is super important. All the people that I've coached will laugh when they hear this. It's inviting consent. So when it's appropriate, now there's going to be times when you're not going to do this, but when it's appropriate, before giving feedback, it's powerful to invite, consent. Asking, hey, can I offer you a thought on this? Would you like some feedback? I do this all the time with my clients. This small step increases a person's sense of control, making them feel more respected, less defensive, and it gets them leaning in. So inviting it, asking for that consent, increases that recipient's sense of control, making them feel more respected and less defensive. Psychologically, choice reduces, once again, that amygdala activation, which often triggers resistance of unsolicited advice. I mean, how many times have you had somebody just come up to you and start giving you advice? You're like, first of all, I'm not ready for it. Secondly, I have no interest that you're 100 pounds overweight and you want to tell me how to get in shape, right? So we want that. People will lean in when they do this. This openness makes them more receptive to hearing and integrating that feedback. In my coaching sessions, people that I've coached for 10 years, I'll still ask them, hey, do you want some feedback? And of course they do, but I'm still doing that. All right, lastly, understanding the communication style. This is a real important one. Most people totally blow this. So, we process information in one of 4 ways: visually, auditorily, kinesthetically, and digitally. And, if we want feedback to come in the way that we process information, we need to understand what is the communication style of the person receiving. So visual learners respond best to images, charts, or words like see, look, view. Auditory learners prefer spoken words and discussions. And, I'm going to tell you when you hear this, those are the words. Kinesthetic learners understand best through hands-on experience and feelings. I want you to get a feel for this. I want you to walk through this. And then the digital learners, and we're going to do a whole podcast on this, we'll go deeper, is they're logical thinkers. They need structure. They need data. They need information. And so if we want to identify their style for that feedback to drop in more deeply. So here's a couple examples. For a visual learner might appreciate seeing a model of a good performance, while a kinesthetic learner might prefer practicing a new skill. An auditory learner might value a thoughtful conversation. A digital learner may need to hear logical explanations and evidence. Tailoring your feedback to match their style increases clarity and absorption, reduces misunderstanding, and shows a deeper respect on how they naturally engage with the world, making your feedback both more meaningful and actionable. We're in the show notes. I'm going to give you a quiz so you can determine what your style is and your team style. Here's a quick example for each, VAKD style. Those are the acronym, right? So here, visual. Here's a quick chart that shows how your project timelines compare to the goal. You can see where we slipped a bit, all right? That would be an example of visual. Now, auditory. Let me tell you about the project so you can hear how this may resonate with you. Next, kinesthetic. Let's walk through the process together. You'll get a feel for how small tweaks could make a big impact. Digital. Based on the data, the last 3 reports, your accuracy rate dropped by 5%. Let's break down why that might be happening. And so those are the styles. So if I'm going to present something, I'm just going to give you an example. So if I'm doing a presentation and I don't know, I'm going to start with this. Let me show you how the project's going to work. And as you hear me tell you, you'll start to get a deeper feeling inside of the steps, and the data will start making sense. So we start with visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and digital, using those words. So that's what we want to do. So we want to understand the communication style, and if not, we want to use a variety of those words and processes. Okay, wrapping this up, a few additional things to consider. When you're giving feedback, be compassionate and direct. Speak kindly, but don't water the message down. Honest plus caring equals trust. Normalize failure. Remind each other mistakes are proof and an effort of growth. Failure is valuable feedback, not a flaw. Also, ask your people, how do they prefer coaching? Find out, how do they like to get feedback? I always ask my clients, how do you like to be coached? How do you not like to be coached? And you can do the same thing with feedback. And you got to regularly practice this. Give and ask for feedback often. It's a skill that grows with use. Focus on specific actions. Talk about what was done, not who they are. Clear actions equal clear improvement. Well, now it's time for the Q&A game with my illustrious producer, Mike Smith. Mike, welcome.
Hey, good to be here. I've got some great questions about feedback. And let's start with, what the heck does that term mean? When we talk about feedback, what are we talking about?
Well, feedback, if we look at it, is an exchange of energy and information. It's giving information of what's going well or what might be some challenges, but it's really helping someone get to their next level through communication.
So it sounds simple. Why do people struggle with feedback?
It's one of the biggest struggles that I'm seeing, First of all, with all the technology use, with our younger people and older, people, we're not talking to each other as much. So just that the network of communication, of empathy, of connection, reading body language, voice cues, it's really not being activated. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is we just haven't been coached on how to do it. As an athlete, when I grew up, when I was getting feedback from people that were 30, 40, 50 years old. They learned how to give feedback from people that were 30 or 50 years old. That's like 100 years old feedback style. And there's a lot of great research and validated tools that people just don't know about.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you some questions about giving and receiving feedback. What are some of the common pitfalls of giving feedback?
Well, giving feedback, not regulating yourself. So you're a business owner, you're a parent, you get triggered, right? You want a behavior to change. And so you're in that stimulated state, and then you're just going for what's wrong, right? Starting with what's wrong with somebody with the wrong voice tone, the wrong style, it's just going to shut them down. Right. So we want to regulate our nervous system. We want to use some of the tools of identifying what somebody might be doing well. We call it feedback sandwich. What they might be doing well, then moving in with the word and, not but, and here are some things where we can change and improve your behavior, and then finishing with, and I really like your effort, or whatever it may be. But really couching it in a way where we're starting with something positive, the challenge and positive. Now, that's not the only technique, but those are some tools.
Excellent. What about breathing in that situation?
Well, so once again, the giver of it, if we're triggered, the 4-7-8 breathing or diaphragmatic breathing can, activate our parasympathetic nervous system, calm ourselves. And the receiver of information, that feedback, same thing. I coach, let's calm the nervous system so we can actually hear it.
Receiving feedback is hard for most people, I think. So what are some of the common pitfalls and or ways to address receiving feedback in a, let's say, a positive way?
Yeah, so number one, we got to realize that when someone's giving feedback, it's not about our character. It's not about who we are as a person. It's about a behavior. And we want to be able to separate that. We also want to reframe it that this is actually for us to get better. So we want to have that growth mindset. We want to be able to receive it and really not to take it personally. Right? Mm-hmm. We have a negativity bias. We're going to be more focused on what negative things come. That's our limbic system in our brain. And so we want to move to that prefrontal cortex and really, look at it from a positive perspective that this is here to help me.
Yeah, because it can feel like a criticism, which
Yes.
immediately triggers us into defense mode in many cases.
100%.
Yeah, so we have to look at it differently, is what you're saying. You have to look at it as if it is a positive learning experience.
Yes. And a lot of folks, including myself in the past, have a lot of negative, memories around people giving us feedback, right? So then we're getting triggered old memories where it's just traumatic. So now we're sitting here at 30, 40, 50, but we're really 5. And we're like, oh man, I remember. So It's really retraining our brain.
Mm-hmm. Is it important to, and if so, how does one rehearse receiving feedback?
Yeah, this is a big one. Not many people are coaching this, and I hope through this they will. So you've actually got to mentally rehearse it. Imagine you're in a situation, workplace, athletically. Imagining you're going to get the feedback, taking a couple breaths, 4-7-8, 4 in, hold for 7, exhale, grounding ourselves. Now being ready to hear it, not defensively. So we're mentally rehearsing it. Now we've got the feedback. We want to process it, ask any clarifying questions, and then a couple more breaths. And then afterwards, we can even do some journaling on it. And the more we practice receiving and the more we practice giving it, the more of a natural experience is. If we're not receiving feedback or asking for it, or if we're not giving it on a regular basis, we're not practicing it. And that's why there also is a lot of undelivered communications I see with my corporate clients, or even when I'm working with families and parents and kids, is that because there's not a good skill set, we just don't even do it. We just stop because we feel like, if I do it, it's not going to go well. So, I'm really here in this podcast and in this training is to get that information out there so we can create more compassion, more care, more connection, because feedback is ultimately creating better relationships and better performance.
Why do people struggle giving good feedback? Giving good feedback.
Giving good feedback is a struggle because they're just not trained at it. So if you don't have the right training, so you don't have the right tools, and then you're overstimulated back to the high RPMs, regulating a performance mindfully, RPMs, going back to we've got to be able to regulate ourselves. A lot of people don't know how to do that. And then once you regulate yourself, then what are the actual steps to give the feedback?
Do people ever feel embarrassed or self-conscious, let's say, giving feedback, let alone receiving it? Let's just say giving feedback. Oh, I don't know if I want to say it's.
Well, there's so we get into this. I don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
Right.
I don't want to upset somebody.
Or I don't want to over-compliment them. Or
yeah. So what's happening is we're not allowing expansiveness. We're not allowing growth. Right. We're responsible for giving good feedback. We're not responsible for how somebody takes it. So we get caught in this. I don't want to upset somebody. At the same time, then. You're not validating, you're not helping somebody get better because you're holding back. Mm-hmm. So when we have the right tools, we can all grow together.
One of your big tenets is self-compassion. What's the role of self-compassion in either giving or receiving?
Well, I'll start with the receiving. So a lot of times if we've had bad experiences or the feedback's coming in a way that's, maybe not the right tone or style, it can trigger, us being defensive or even feeling guilty or shameful, right? And so when we bring the self-compassion in, we don't over-identify with it. We know that this is a common experience of maybe feeling triggered. And then we bring in the kindness, the self-kindness in our talk and our actions. We calm the nervous system, then we can actually hear the feedback. Right. Then once we hear it, we have the performance step, as we've heard in my other podcast. The performance step is then we take that information and we get back into the game, the court, our life, to improve ourselves.
Giving and receiving feedback has a lot to do with the tone of voice and the body language that's involved. It can be a compliment that or positive feedback you're getting, but if somebody has a frown on their face and their arms folded, it's not genuine. It's got to be phony in some way. They don't mean it.
Yeah.
And the opposite can be true too. Maybe we can address voice tone and body language.
Yeah. So, there's lots of research on how much of the communication comes from the body language, the voice tone, the words. It's not really important to know like percentages. What's important to know that it's aligned. That if I'm coming to you with feedback, that my voice tone, words, and body language are aligned. It would be like this. If I'm sitting here going, yeah, Mike, I'm real excited to answer these questions. It'd be like the words say it, but the body language doesn't, right? So we want that alignment. Right. In receiving, we want to be in good body language, in receiving in that dialogue, but also giving it.
Yeah. I think that would be even harder in receiving because, boy, I don't know what's coming, so I'm going to be on the defense. Right. Maybe I'm not making eye contact. Maybe I'm...
That's why we want to be in a good body posture, open. Yeah. We want to regulate our breathing, and we want to lean in, right? That takes practice. If we're not practicing that, it's not going to happen.
What is SBI, the SBI technique you talk about, and why is it important in relation to feedback?
So it's situation, behavior, impact. So here's the situation. Example. Hey, Bob, you're in this meeting, and you interrupted the team, right? So meeting, situation, behavior, interrupted the team repeatedly, impact. It doesn't allow those people to communicate effectively. And it makes it very clear. And it allows somebody to receive the information and take action.
Got it. What is the feedback sandwich? And can I get it at Burger King or what?
In-N-Out.
In-N-Out has it? Okay.
Feedback sandwich. Bun, what's going well. Meat, any challenges or places of improvement. Bun, we leave them with something that's positive. Right? And then we can also start with just the meat, the challenge, finish it with a positive. There's a variety of things, but the feedback sandwich allows somebody to hear the feedback less defensively, and it's just one of the tools.
Got it. So we talked a little bit earlier about the RPMs, the regulating performance mindfully, that concept, and how does that relate to feedback?
So the RPMs are important because we have to understand, am I overstimulated? Is my sympathetic nervous system activated? Because if we're trying to get feedback and we can't regulate, first of all, we're not aware where we're at, it's going to be very hard. So like, wow, I'm really triggered. Some breaths, some grounding, some, reformatting the way I want to receive this, right? Now we're able to receive it. But if we're not aware of those RPMs, we're just going to go into that shutdown mode or argument mode.
And I imagine it applies to when I am giving feedback. I've got to be aware that maybe I'm upset with something I'm going to talk to the individual about. I've got to regulate myself before I give that feedback.
Of course, you're a parent. There's situations, I'm sure, where, you're not as regulated. I can, relate to my dog Mana, right? If I'm dysregulated and want to, guide him or be his, positive leader, I'm not going to do a good job. So he's a great teacher for me on a daily basis.
Excellent. We can learn from our pets.
Yes.
Sure. They can train us. Why is receiving and giving feedback so hard for people to do effectively? We talked about the struggles a few moments ago.
Yeah.
But as a general, throwing a blanket over it, what's the problem with feedback?
Just not understanding the tools to use and really not practicing.
Do you find in your practice that most people want to know how to give feedback?
100%. From my professional athletes, to student athletes, to my executives, this is a topic that I am coaching every day.
Yeah.
Because it really comes down to high stakes communication, right? High stakes communication is going to include giving feedback that's received. And you know the old saying, when safety is present, you can talk about anything. When safety is not present, you can't talk about anything. So it's creating that safety, having the tools to start a conversation out with safety, having the tools when things get challenging to return to safety. And when we start practicing, we get more confident in the ability to connect, have compassion, and relate to others.
I think you're right when you say it just isn't taught and certainly isn't practiced. I think you know that I'm a teacher now at a local college.
Yes.
This is one of the first things I had to lecture about was how to be collaborative, let's call it, in a group setting.
Yes.
So that you can deal with a client, when you go out into the big world. It was complete news to these young and some not so young people in terms of just not ever having heard anything about this.
Yeah.
Why isn't it taught? I mean, I understand why you're focusing on it. Where has it been all our lives?
Well, it's been there. It's just not necessarily been effective. You know, I've worked with many thousands of athletes, professional all the way down. I have not yet, including myself, had an answer that was a yes to this question. Have you ever received any coaching on how to give or receive feedback? The answer 100% has been no. Think about it. Feedback is the exact tool for you to get better, right? It is the number one way we're going to get better. This happened. If you do this, you're going to get better. Thousands of athletes. Yeah, somebody told me how to do that. So my goal, my passion on this is to help all people, athlete, non-athlete, mom, dad, executive, CEO, business leader. Here's how to receive it. Here's how to give it in a caring, direct, and compassionate way.
Extremely valuable in a team setting and for individuals as well. All right, please fill in this blank. These are my favorite questions. Fill in the blanks. Giving feedback is
a gift that you can give someone to alter their life.
Receiving feedback is
a gift to alter your life. Here's your takeaways. Feedback isn't just about communication. It's a high-performance tool. It's not a fixed trait. It's a trainable skill, a muscle you can build over time. When you receive feedback with openness, you unlock your next level. When you give it with clarity and care, you help others rise with you. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present, coachable, and intentional. Feedback fuels growth, sharpens performance, and deepens connection at home, at work, on teams, and in every relationship that matters. So this week, flex both sides of the muscle. Ask someone you trust for honest feedback. Breathe, reflect, and take one meaningful action from it. Then offer feedback to someone else with empathy, purpose, and precision. Thanks for listening today. Like, follow, and subscribe. And until next time, always bring your A game.